I used to believe a family could stay together as long as someone was willing to bend. For most of my life, that someone was me. My name is Margaret Ellis. I was 65 years old. The spring my daughter-in-law moved into our house. Though back then, I did not think of it as our house in any serious way. On paper, it belonged to my husband, Harold. In daily life, it belonged to everyone who needed something from it. The kitchen belonged to whoever was hungry. The laundry room belonged to whoever had run out of clean clothes. The living room belonged to the television, the mail, the toys that would come later, and Harold's old recliner by the window. My bedroom was the only room that still felt partly mine, and even there I kept a basket of folded towels beside the dresser because someone always needed one. Before I retired, I taught third grade at a public elementary school on the west side of town. 34 years in the same district. I taught children how to carry the one, how to write thank you notes, how to raise their hands before speaking, and how to say sorry even when they were embarrassed. I had a voice that could quiet a classroom without shouting. Parents used to tell me I had patience. I used to smile when they said that. Back then, I thought patience was a virtue. Later, I learned patience could become a room with no door if you stayed in it too long. Retirement did not arrive the way I had imagined. I had once thought I would wake up late, drink coffee by the kitchen window, read the books I had bought and never opened, maybe volunteer twice a week at the library. I even bought a small notebook and wrote down things I wanted to do once my days were finally my own. Learn watercolor, walk every morning, visit my sister in Maine, clean out the attic before my knees got worse. I kept that notebook in the drawer of my nightstand. For years, I only opened it to place old receipts inside. Our son Daniel was 32 when he brought Claire home for the first time. He was a long-haul truck driver, which meant he was always either leaving, coming back tired, or checking the weather for a state none of us were in. He had a good heart, my Daniel, though people with good hearts can still fail you if they never learn to look closely. He loved me in the way sons sometimes love mothers. They believe we'll always be fine. He hugged me hard when he came home, told me to sit down more, and handed me $20 or $40 once in a while, as if he were slipping me a small treat rather than contributing to a household he still partly depended on. Harold liked to say Daniel got his work ethic from him. I never argued, though I knew better. Harold had worked in county administration for nearly 40 years. He was not a cruel man in the way people usually mean that word. He did not drink, he did not gamble. He did not raise his hand to me. He paid the mortgage for decades and never let anyone forget it. In his mind, that single fact settled every question. If the roof did not leak, if the lights came on, if the house stood in a decent neighborhood with trimmed hedges and a two-car garage, then he had done his part. Everything inside that house belonged to me. Not as a gift, as a duty. He had a way of saying things that sounded reasonable if you did not live beside them every day. You have always been better with the house, Margaret. You know where everything is. I would only get in your way. When a man repeats those sentences for 40 years, they stop sounding like excuses and start sounding like weather, something you work around. Claire was pretty in a careful way. Not flashy exactly, but always put together. Smooth hair, clean nails, light perfume, clothes that looked simple until you noticed how much they must have cost for a girl working at a supermarket customer service counter. She smiled often when Daniel was in the room. She called me Mrs. Ellis for the first month, then Mom after the engagement, though the word never fully settled in her mouth. I told myself that was normal. Not every young woman knew how to enter another family. It took time. She and Daniel had been dating for less than a year when he told us they were getting married. Harold was watching the evening news. I was cutting green beans at the kitchen counter. Daniel stood there in his work jacket, turning his baseball cap in both hands. Claire sat quietly beside him, with both hands resting in her lap. "We are thinking late summer," he said. Harold muted the television, but did not turn it off. "Late summer is quick." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, we do not want to drag it out." Claire smiled then, small and polite. "We just want something simple." I remember looking at her hands. They were folded neatly in her lap. but one thumb kept rubbing the side of the other. She seemed nervous, and because she seemed nervous, my heart softened toward her. I had spent too many years around children not to recognize when someone was waiting to be judged. What stayed with me even more than Claire's nervous hands was Daniel's face. I had seen him bring girls home before over the years. Nice girls, kind girls, girls who never stayed long enough for me to remember their birthdays. Claire was different. She was the first woman who made him talk about next year instead of next week. Around her, he smiled more easily. He laughed without looking over his shoulder at the clock, wondering when he had to leave again. I remember thinking that whatever happened in life, I wanted that look to stay on my son's face. A simple wedding can still be beautiful, I said. Daniel looked relieved. Harold asked practical questions. Where would they live? What about Daniel's route schedule? How much money had they saved? Claire let Daniel answer most of it. They did not have much saved. Daniel's hours were irregular. Claire's job gave her steady pay, but not much extra. Apartments were expensive, and Daniel did not want Claire living alone whenever he was on the road. Before anyone said it out loud, the answer had already walked into the room and sat down among us. They would stay with us for a while, just until they get on their feet, Harold said later that night, as if the idea had been mine. I stood at the sink, washing the green bean bowl. The water was warm over my hands. How long is a while? He lowered himself into his recliner with a sigh. You know how young people are now. Hard to start out. That was not an answer. But I did not push. I had already begun making plans in my head. The back bedroom needed new curtains. Daniel's old dresser had a broken drawer. The closet was still full of baseball cards, winter coats, and boxes of school projects I had never been able to throw away. If Claire was going to live with us, I wanted her to feel welcome. A woman knows when she is being tolerated. I did not want her to feel that in my house. For the next several weeks, I cleaned Daniel's old room a little at a time. Daniel had started bringing over a few of Claire's things every weekend. He said it would make moving easier after the wedding. A couple of cardboard boxes with her name written in black marker already sat in the closet beside his old winter coats. I worked slowly because my knees stiffened if I knelt too long. I washed the windows, wiped the baseboards, took down the faded pennant from his high school football days. I found old report cards, a cracked phone charger, 2 missing socks, and a stack of birthday cards he had kept from childhood. On one of them, written in purple marker, was a crooked sentence from when he was 7. I love you, Mom, because you make soup when I am sick. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while after reading that. It is strange how memory can make a grown man small again. The folder fell out of the closet on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember that because Tuesday was the day I usually washed towels. The dryer was humming downstairs, and the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. I had been pulling an old plastic storage bin from the top shelf when a thin manila folder slid from between 2 boxes and landed at my feet. At first, I thought it was one of Daniel's insurance papers. He was always stuffing documents somewhere and forgetting them. I picked it up, meaning only to place it with the rest of his things. Then I saw Claire's name. Not Claire Ellis. Not yet. Claire Whitman. The label was from Riverside Women's Clinic. I stood there for several seconds with my hand on the folder, feeling as if I had accidentally stepped into a room I was not supposed to enter. I should have put it down. That is what I told myself later. I should have closed the closet, carried the towels downstairs, and let the past belong to whoever had lived it. But the folder was already partly open from the fall, and the first page was turned just enough for me to read the words near the top. Pregnancy, termination, follow-up. I did not move. The room was quiet, except for the dryer below and a lawnmower somewhere down the street. I read Claire's name again, then the date. It was several months before she and Daniel announced their engagement. I did not read every line. I want to be honest about that. I read enough to understand what it was, and then I closed the folder as carefully as if it were something fragile. I sat down on Daniel's bed. My first feeling was not anger. It was sadness. A young woman had gone through something painful. Alone or not, I did not know. By choice or under pressure, I did not know that either. The paper did not tell me the kind of story people think it tells. It only told me there had been blood work, a procedure, follow-up instructions, and a body that needed time to recover. Then, Daniel's face came into my mind. My son, standing in the kitchen, with his cap in his hands. We do not want to drag it out. I remembered Claire's thumb rubbing the side of her hand, her quietness, her nervous smile. I did not think of betrayal. Not then. I thought maybe Daniel had made a mistake. I thought maybe he had been careless with a girl who had already paid more than he understood. He was my son, but I was not blind. He was kind, yes, but kindness does not always make a man responsible. If Claire had suffered because of him, then perhaps marriage was his way of standing by her. Perhaps bringing her into our home was not only convenient, but necessary. Perhaps the best thing I could do was not ask questions that would shame everyone. That is how I explained it to myself. I placed the folder back where it had fallen from, between the boxes on the closet shelf. I did not tell Harold. He would have reacted badly, not because he was moral in any deep way, but because he cared about appearances. He would have asked whose fault it was, what people might say, whether Daniel was being trapped. I did not want that kind of talk in the house. I did not tell Daniel either. A mother can ask a question that changes the way her child looks at her forever. I was not ready to risk that. Most of all, I did not tell Claire. That evening, when she came by after work with Daniel, I made chicken and rice because I had noticed she ate that without picking around the vegetables. She seemed tired. I asked if she wanted to sit. I am fine, she said. I served her first. I remember that very clearly. Harold noticed and gave me a quick look, but he did not say anything. Daniel talked about a route he might take through Kentucky the following week. Claire listened, nodding at the right times. When she reached for the water pitcher, I saw her sleeve slip back and noticed how thin her wrist was. After dinner, she helped carry 2 plates to the sink. I told her to leave them. You worked all day, I said. Go rest. She looked at me for a second longer than usual. Maybe she was surprised. Maybe she was grateful. Maybe I only wanted her to be. Thank you, Mom, she said. It was the first time she called me that without Daniel prompting her. For weeks after that, I treated those 2 words like a promise. The wedding was small, just like Claire had said she wanted. It was held in the back room of a family restaurant near the river. The kind of place with framed photographs of old bridges on the walls and carpet that had been cleaned too many times to have any real color left. There were no flowers hanging from the ceiling, no string quartet, no long aisle for Claire to walk down. Just 30 people, folding chairs, a white tablecloth on the main table, and a cake I had ordered from the bakery 2 blocks from our house, because Claire once mentioned she liked lemon filling. She looked beautiful that day. I still remember that. Her dress was simple, sleeveless, bought on sale, but altered well. Daniel could not stop looking at her. Every time he did, his face changed in a way that made me forgive more than I should have, before there was even anything to forgive. Harold gave a short toast. He talked about responsibility, about marriage being work, about how a man should provide a roof for his family. People nodded because it sounded proper. I stood near the cake table with my hands folded in front of me and thought about how strange it was that a roof could mean so much to a man who rarely noticed what happened underneath it. Claire thanked me 3 times that afternoon. For the cake, for helping with the dress, for bringing extra safety pins in my purse. Each time, she touched my arm lightly, and each time I felt the same quiet relief. Maybe I had done the right thing. Maybe kindness given early could become trust later. Maybe the folder in the closet would stay where I had put it, buried under winter coats and things that belonged to a life before marriage. After the wedding, Daniel carried Claire across the threshold as a joke. He nearly hit her shoulder on the doorframe, and everyone laughed. Claire laughed too, one hand around his neck, her shoes dangling from 2 fingers. I had put fresh sheets on their bed that morning and placed a small vase of grocery store daisies on the dresser. Nothing expensive, just something bright. That first week, the house felt full, but not yet heavy. Claire woke up early for work and came downstairs with damp hair, asking where we kept coffee filters. Daniel left before sunrise 2 days later for a route to Tennessee. Harold read the paper at the table and watched Claire move through the kitchen the way a person watches a guest, politely but with a little discomfort. I made breakfast because I always made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, cut fruit when we had it. Claire said she usually just grabbed something on the way to work, but she sat down anyway when I placed a plate in front of her. "You do not have to do all this," she said. I smiled. "It is no trouble." At the time, I meant it. For the first month, Claire tried to help in small ways. She rinsed her cup. She folded a few towels one Sunday afternoon while watching a movie. She asked me where the broom was, though she did not use it long before her phone rang and she stepped outside. I noticed these things, but I did not judge them harshly. People need time to learn the shape of a new household. I told myself that often. Daniel called from the road every night if the signal was good. He asked how Claire was doing. He asked if Harold was behaving. He asked if I was tired. I always answered the same way. "We are fine." That was the easiest sentence in the world to say, because no one ever asked what fine meant. By autumn, Claire had stopped coming downstairs before work early enough to eat. I began packing breakfast for her instead. A bagel wrapped in a napkin. A boiled egg. Sometimes a banana. She would take it from the counter with her keys already in her hand and say, "Thanks, Mom," almost over her shoulder. The first few times, I felt useful. Later, I simply added it to the rhythm of the morning. Harold had his own rhythm. Coffee at 6:30. Blood pressure pill beside the sugar bowl. Local news. Toast cut diagonally because he said it stayed warmer that way, though I never understood how. If I forgot the pill, he would tap the table with one finger until I noticed. He knew where the pill bottle was. It sat less than 2 feet from his right hand. But some habits grow roots deeper than common sense. One morning, Claire left a lipstick mark on a white coffee mug and placed it in the sink without rinsing it. It was not important. A mug is only a mug. I washed it. The next day there were 2 mugs, one from the night before with a half-inch of coffee dried at the bottom. I washed those too. Then came the sweater over the dining chair, the work shoes by the hallway, the supermarket receipts left on the counter, the damp towel on the bathroom floor. Each thing was small enough to ignore. Together, they became a language no one admitted they were speaking. I was still learning to translate it. When Daniel came home, Claire became brighter. She cooked once, pasta with jarred sauce and frozen garlic bread, and Daniel praised it as if she had made Thanksgiving dinner. I praised it too. Harold ate quietly and later told me the sauce was too sweet. I said nothing. After dinner, Daniel stood when I reached for the plates. "Mom, sit down," he said. I looked at him, surprised enough that I almost laughed. He took the plates from my hands and carried them to the sink. For a few minutes, I let myself sit there at the table while he ran the water and rolled up his sleeves like a man who had decided to do better. He washed 2 plates before Claire called from upstairs. "Daniel?" He turned his head toward the hallway. "Coming," he said. Then he looked back at the sink. "I'll finish these in a minute." I nodded. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The water in the sink cooled. I sat there a little longer than I needed to. Finally, I stood, rolled up my own sleeves, and washed the rest before the sauce dried on the dishes. The next morning, Daniel came downstairs, saw the empty sink, and frowned. I was going to finish those. I smiled and handed him his coffee. I know. He believed me. He believed he had helped, and for longer than I should have, I believed it too. Daniel left again 2 days later, and Claire brought home fried chicken from a drive-thru because she said work had been exhausting. She put the bag on the table, kissed the top of my head, and said she did not know how I had cooked every day for so many years. It sounded like admiration. It would take me a long time to understand that admiration can be another way of handing someone the work. Winter came early that year. The first snow arrived before Thanksgiving, wet and heavy, bending the branches of the maple tree in the front yard. Claire hated driving in snow, so on bad mornings I warmed up her car. Harold said I should not baby her. Then he asked whether I had called the furnace company because the upstairs vent was making noise again. Daniel sent $200 in December and told me to buy myself something nice for Christmas. I used it for groceries. I did not tell him that. It seemed unnecessary. The house needed food. Food cost money. Money came in, money went out. That was how it had always worked. My pension arrived at the beginning of each month. Harold's retirement money came too, though I never saw the full amount. He handled his accounts separately, because that was how he had always done it. Household things passed through me because that was how I had always done it. There was no argument about it. That was part of the problem. An argument would have meant both people knew something was happening. When the electric bill went up, I paid it. When Claire asked if we could switch to the softer laundry detergent because the regular one bothered her skin, I bought it. When Daniel said he would pay us back for adding Claire to the phone plan, I told him not to worry this month. When Harold wanted the good coffee instead of the store brand because retirement should come with some dignity, I clipped a coupon and bought the good coffee. At night, I wrote numbers in the back of my old retirement notebook. Milk, eggs, chicken, detergent, gas bill. Claire works shoes, reimbursed later maybe. I did not call it a budget. A budget sounds like something a person controls. Mine was more like a weather report after the storm had already passed. Claire became pregnant the following spring. She told us on a Sunday afternoon. Daniel had just come home from a 5-day run and still smelled faintly of diesel and cold air. Claire stood beside him in the living room, holding a small white envelope from the clinic. This time there was no nervous rubbing of the thumb. She looked pleased, almost proud, but also watchful, as if checking the room for the proper reaction. Daniel cried. Not loudly, just one hand over his mouth, eyes red, laughing at himself. I cried because he cried. Harold smiled and said, "Well, that is good news," as if someone had told him the roof inspection passed. I hugged Claire carefully. She felt stiff at first, then leaned into me. "You will not have to worry," I told her. "We will help." I meant that too. Pregnancy made Claire tired, and because she was tired, I did more. I packed her lunches with crackers for nausea. I washed her work shirts separately because certain smells bothered her. I rubbed her feet once when they were swollen after a long shift, though Harold looked uncomfortable and left the room. Daniel called more often, asking if she was eating, if she was resting, if the baby was moving yet. He asked me to keep an eye on her. I did. No one asked who was keeping an eye on me. The baby was born in January, a girl with dark hair and a serious little face. They named her Sophie. When I held her for the first time, she opened one eye and looked at me as if she had been expecting me. I forgot my aching back. I forgot the hospital chair where I had slept for 2 hours with my coat over my lap. I forgot that Claire had snapped at me twice during labor, and that Daniel had apologized with his eyes because he did not know what else to do. Babies do that. They arrive helpless and make everyone believe love is enough to fix what adults have not. Claire struggled after bringing Sophie home. That part was real. She cried easily. She said nursing hurt. She said the baby only slept when someone else held her. She said she felt trapped in her own skin. I recognized exhaustion when I saw it, and I did not blame her. I took the night feedings when I could. I washed the bottles. I changed the crib sheets. I learned which cry meant gas and which meant hunger. I warmed towels in the dryer before bath time because Sophie screamed when cold air touched her belly. Claire returned to work after 8 weeks. She said they needed the money. She also said being home all day made her feel like she was disappearing. I understood that sentence more than she knew. At first, the arrangement seemed temporary. I would watch Sophie during Claire's shifts, just until they found affordable childcare. Just until Daniel's roots became steadier. Just until summer. Families survive on those words. Just until. They sound harmless because they point toward an ending. But in our house, just until often meant no one planned to bring it up again. Sophie's things spread through the house. Bottles near the sink. Diapers stacked beside the sofa. Tiny socks in every laundry load. A plastic playmat in the living room that Harold stepped around with great irritation, though he smiled whenever Sophie grabbed his finger. Claire's work schedule changed from week to week. Sometimes she opened, Sometimes she closed. Sometimes she said a coworker had called out and she had to stay late. I believed her. Why would I not? By the time Sophie turned 1, I knew the price of diapers better than I knew the price of books. My retirement notebook filled with grocery lists and pharmacy receipts. I stopped writing down things I wanted to do. There did not seem to be room on the page. Daniel came home less often, after his company changed routes. He sent money when he could. Sometimes $50, sometimes $100, once $300 after a long haul that had kept him away. Nearly 2 weeks. He always sounded proud when he told me to use it for whatever we needed. I always thanked him. I never said that whatever we needed had usually been bought already. He loved his daughter. That was never in doubt. When he was home, he lifted Sophie high above his head until she squealed. He took photos of her sleeping. He kissed Claire in the kitchen and told her she was a good mother. Claire smiled tiredly and let him believe the version of home he needed to believe so he could leave again without feeling guilty. I helped him believe it too. There were moments when I almost said something. Once, after he found me scrubbing dried oatmeal from the underside of the high chair at 11 at night, he told me I worked too hard. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "It has to be done." He kissed my forehead and went upstairs. 2 years later, Claire became pregnant again. This time, I did not cry right away. I looked at Sophie sitting on the kitchen floor surrounded by wooden blocks, and I felt a quiet tightening in my chest before joy found its way in. I was ashamed of that. A grandmother should be happy. A mother should be supportive. A woman who had discovered what I had discovered in that old folder should be grateful that life was moving forward. So I smiled. I hugged Claire. I told Daniel a second baby would be a blessing. And he was. Noah was born on a rainy morning in May, loud and red-faced and hungry from the start. Sophie was 2.5, old enough to feel pushed aside, but too young to explain it. Claire had less patience the second time. She said boys were harder. She said Sophie was acting out. She said Daniel being gone so much was unfair. All of that was partly true. The problem with partly true things is that they can cover a great deal of selfishness without looking like lies. I became the center of the house in a way no one named. Sophie called for me when she woke from naps. Noah settled faster against my shoulder than Claire's. Harold asked me what was for dinner while I was holding a bottle in one hand and stirring soup with the other. Claire texted from work that she would be late, then came home smelling of outside food and sweet perfume, kissing the children quickly before disappearing upstairs to shower. Sometimes she brought toys. A stuffed rabbit for Sophie, a light-up rattle for Noah. She was not without affection. That mattered to me, because I was always looking for reasons not to think badly of her. She could be gentle when she wanted to be. She could sit on the floor and make Sophie laugh. She remembered the children's clothing sizes and liked choosing outfits for them. On social media, she looked like a young mother doing her best. Inside the house, best was harder to photograph. One evening, when Noah was 6 months old, Claire came home with 2 paper bags from a burger place and placed them on the counter. "I just cannot cook tonight," she said. "I had already made chicken stew. It was still warm on the stove." She looked at it and gave a little laugh. Not cruel exactly, just careless. "Oh, I did not know." I wanted to say, "You did not ask." Instead, I ladled the stew into containers and put them in the refrigerator. Harold ate one of the burgers and said, "At least this saved Margaret some trouble." Claire smiled. I washed the pot. That night, after everyone went upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my hands. The skin had grown thin across the knuckles. There was a small burn on my wrist from the oven rack and a faint rash from washing bottles so often. My hands had held chalk, books, report cards, feverish children, my son's face when he was small, my granddaughter's first bottle, my grandson's bath towel. They had also carried everyone's plates to the sink. For the first time, I wondered what my hands would do if I stopped giving them instructions. Then Noah cried, and I got up before anyone else heard him. The first thing I gave up was sleep. I did not notice it at first. Mothers and grandmothers are good at losing sleep and calling it love. When Sophie was small, I told myself night feedings were temporary. When Noah was born, I told myself 2 children were naturally harder than one. When Claire went back to work and Daniel stayed on the road longer than before, I told myself every family had a season when everyone simply had to do more. Only later did I understand that in our house, everyone did more usually meant I did more. My mornings began before the sky changed color. I woke to the sound of Noah shifting in his crib or Sophie padding down the hall with her blanket dragging behind her. Sometimes I woke before either of them because my body had learned to expect someone needing me. I would lie still for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, listening to Harold breathe beside me. Then I would swing my feet to the floor carefully because my left knee hurt more in the morning. There was always something waiting. A bottle to warm, a diaper to change, laundry left in the washer overnight, lunches to pack, coffee to make, Harold's pill to place beside his mug, Claire's work shirt to pull from the dryer because she had forgotten to move it, Sophie's hair to brush while she complained that the comb hurt, Noah's oatmeal to stir with one hand while holding him with the other because he had learned to cry whenever I put him down. None of it felt like suffering when taken alone. A bottle is only a bottle. A sock is only a sock. A child crying is not a crime. The trouble was that nothing ever finished. By the time breakfast was cleaned up, lunch had started. By the time lunch was put away, the children needed naps. By the time they woke, the laundry buzzer went off. By the time I folded the towels, Claire texted that she would be late. "Mom, I have to stay an extra hour today. Can you handle dinner?" "Of course," I typed back. I typed that so often my phone began suggesting it before I finished the sentence. Of course. Most days, I believed her. The supermarket did change schedules without much warning. People called out sick. Managers asked too much. I had worked long enough to know that a job could take more from a person than the paycheck gave back. So when Claire came home tired, I did not ask questions. If her cheeks were pink from cold air, or her perfume seemed stronger than usual, I told myself she had probably freshened up before leaving work. If she carried a takeout coffee when she said she had been too busy to sit down all day, I assumed someone had bought it for her. I was not looking for lies. That may have been my biggest weakness. I kept trying to understand people from the best part of myself. Harold saw the house changing, but only in the ways that bothered him. Toys under his recliner. Fingerprints on the television screen. Crumbs in the seams of the couch. He loved the children, especially when they were clean, fed, and cheerful. But he did not believe love required much movement. He could bounce Noah on his knee for 5 minutes and then hand him back when the baby's face tightened. "I think he wants you," he would say. What he meant was, "I am done." Sometimes, when I was cooking dinner, Sophie would start crying because Noah had pulled her hair or knocked over her tower. At the same time, the washing machine would beep from the laundry room, and Harold would call from the living room that the news was too loud because the children were making noise, and my phone would buzz on the counter. "Mom, sorry." Closing shift got messy. "I will be home around 8. I would stand there with a spoon in my hand and feel my mind split into 4 directions. Turn down the burner. Comfort Sophie. Move the laundry before it soured. Pick Noah up before he screamed himself sick. Answer Claire so she would not worry." No one saw that moment as anything special. That was the point. The moments that wear a woman down rarely look important enough to remember. Claire was not openly cruel in those years. That would have been easier to name. She thanked me when she remembered. She bought me lotion once because she said my hands looked dry. On Mother's Day, she posted a picture of me holding both children and wrote, "We could not do this without you." People commented with hearts. Daniel called from somewhere in Missouri and said he had seen the post. "You look happy, Mom." I looked at the photo again after we hung up. I was smiling because Sophie had just said something funny. Noah had one hand caught in my collar. Behind us, the kitchen counter was covered with bottles, wipes, mail, and a pan soaking in the sink. Claire had cropped most of that out. Pictures are kind that way. They leave out what people do not want to explain. The money became harder to stretch after Noah started formula. Claire said the brand the doctor recommended was gentler on his stomach, and I did not argue. Babies should not suffer because adults are counting pennies. I bought the formula. Then the diapers. Then the wipes. Then Sophie's preschool deposit, because Claire said she would pay me back after her next check. She may have meant it when she said it. That is something I have learned about people. Not every broken promise begins as a lie. Some begin as comfort. My pension came on the 1st of the month. By the 10th, most of it was gone. Harold never asked how much things cost unless he thought they cost too much. He knew prices from 20 years earlier and carried them around like evidence. When I told him the grocery bill had gone up again, he frowned over his newspaper. You must be buying the wrong things. I placed a gallon of milk in the refrigerator and said nothing. He had his own retirement account, his own savings, his own way of checking balances on the computer with the screen turned slightly away. It was not secrecy, exactly. It was simply how our marriage had been arranged without anyone ever signing a paper. He paid for the house, I handled the household. If I needed extra, I was expected to ask. If I asked, he wanted to know why. If I explained, he sighed as though the explanation itself was another expense. So I stopped asking unless there was no other choice. I used coupons. I bought meat on sale and divided it into smaller bags. I watered down the apple juice. I wore the same winter coat for 9 years. I told myself I did not need much. That was true, but it was also convenient for everyone else. Daniel still sent money sometimes. He never forgot my birthday. He called me sweetheart in the same joking way he had since he was a teenager. He worried about bad weather near home and told me not to shovel snow alone, though he was never there when snow needed shoveling. He loved us. I need to say that because it is true. He loved us in the way a man can love a house. He keeps leaving, trusting it will still be standing when he returns. When he came home, the children ran to him. Claire became lighter, more patient, more like the woman he thought he had married. She made pancakes once on a Saturday morning, while Daniel sat at the table with Noah on his lap. Flour dusted her cheek. Sophie clapped when Claire flipped one badly and it folded in half. Daniel laughed and looked at me as if to say, "See? We are doing all right." I smiled back. By Sunday night, Daniel's duffel bag was by the door again. By Monday morning, Claire was back to sleeping through Noah's crying because she had to open the store. Harold was back to asking where his clean socks were. Sophie was back to clinging to my leg while I stirred oatmeal. The house knew who remained. The small failures collected quietly. Claire leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor. Harold placing his empty plate beside the sink instead of in it. Daniel calling to say he would be home Friday and then not arriving until Sunday. Sophie learning to ask me first for water, snacks, stories, clean pajamas, comfort after nightmares. Noah reaching for me when Claire held him too briefly before checking her phone. At first, those things made me proud. Children know who takes care of them. Then, they made me tired. Then, after a while, they made me afraid. Not afraid of the children. Never that. Afraid that I had become necessary, in a way that left no space for me to be anything else. One Thursday in late November, I woke with a sore throat. By noon, my skin hurt under my clothes. By 3, I had chills so sharp, I put on Harold's old cardigan over my sweater. Sophie was cutting paper snowflakes at the kitchen table and leaving scraps all over the floor. Noah had a rash and cried every time I changed him. I took my temperature with the thermometer we kept in the medicine cabinet. 101.7. I remember the number because I stood there looking at it for a long time, almost pleased to have proof. Proof that I was not simply weak. Proof that the heaviness in my bones had a name. I wanted to lie down for 20 minutes. I wanted someone to bring me tea the way I had brought tea to everyone else for 40 years. Harold was in the living room watching a documentary about World War II. I told him I had a fever. He looked away from the television. "You should rest," Noah cried from the changing table. Harold raised his eyebrows toward the hallway. "After you get him settled, I got him settled." Claire came home around 6:30. Her hair was neat, and she was carrying a small shopping bag from a clothing store near the supermarket. She glanced at me while taking off her coat. "You look pale, Mom. I have a fever." "Oh, no. Did you take something?" "Not yet." "You should." She said it kindly enough. Then she went upstairs to change. I stood in the kitchen holding Noah against my shoulder while Sophie asked when dinner would be ready. A pot of rice sat on the stove. Chicken thawed in the sink because I had forgotten to move it earlier. My head throbbed behind my eyes. I waited for Claire to come back down and take the baby. I waited for Harold to turn off the television. I waited for someone to notice that a suggestion was not the same thing as help. No one came, so I made dinner. That night, after the children were asleep, Claire told me not to worry about the dishes. She said she would do them in the morning. In the morning, the dishes were still there. I washed them before anyone woke up, because dried rice is harder to clean. There was no fight. That is what people misunderstand. No one slammed a door. No one called me a name. No one told me I did not matter. They only lived as if I would continue, and I continued. Every day, the proof grew stronger. By winter, I had stopped opening the notebook in my nightstand at all. The page where I had written "Learn Watercolor" had a grocery receipt tucked over it. The receipt was from the day I bought cough syrup for Sophie, diapers for Noah, antacids for Harold, shampoo for Claire because she said the cheap kind made her hair dry, and a single can of soup for myself because I thought it might be easy to heat later. I never ate it. Someone else did. One afternoon, I found Sophie playing school with her dolls. She had lined them up on the rug and was speaking to them in a firm little voice. "You have to wait," she told one doll. "Grandma is busy." I stopped in the doorway. She picked up another doll and patted its back. "Grandma will do it. Not Mommy, not Daddy, Grandma." Children repeat the world they live in before they understand it. I wanted to correct her, but the words would not come. What could I say? That Mommy was tired. Daddy was working. Grandpa had a bad back when it suited him. Grandma was not busy, exactly. Grandma was just where everything landed. So I smiled and asked if her class wanted crackers. She said yes. Of course they did. As months passed, Claire's late shifts became more common. There was always a reason. Inventory. A sick coworker. A new manager who did not know how to schedule properly. Holiday rush. Training. A customer complaint that kept everyone after closing. Sometimes she sent a photo from the break room, her name tag visible, a half-eaten salad on the table. Sometimes she did not send anything at all. I trusted the photos more than I should have. When she came home late, she was often in a good mood. Not always, but often enough that I noticed. She would hum while taking off her shoes or check her reflection in the hallway mirror before going upstairs. Once, I smelled cologne on her scarf. Something sharp and unfamiliar. I assumed a customer had stood too close. People stand too close in stores all the time. That is how trust works when it is trying not to die. It explains things for the other person. The children grew. Sophie started preschool 3 mornings a week. Noah learned to climb out of his crib. Harold's knees worsened, though not enough to stop him from driving to the diner twice a week to meet old coworkers. Daniel missed birthdays sometimes, but called with apologies. So sincere, they made it harder to be angry. Claire became better at saying the right thing when other people could hear. "You are a lifesaver, Mom. I do not know what we would do without you. You should really take a break sometime." She said these things while placing her lunch container in the sink, while stepping over toys, while handing me Noah's jacket because she was running late. The words floated through the house, pretty and useless. I began to feel ashamed of my own resentment. That may be the cruelest part of being needed too much. You start blaming yourself for wanting air. At night, I sometimes stood in the hallway after everyone had gone to bed. I could hear Harold snoring in our room, Claire's television murmuring behind her door, the children breathing softly under their blankets, the house finally quiet, finally still, finally asking nothing from me for a few hours. Those were the moments I should have rested. Instead, I walked through each room picking up what the day had dropped. A plastic cup under the couch, one of Claire's earrings on the bathroom counter, Harold's newspaper folded open to the same page. A toy truck in the hallway where someone would step on it in the morning. I told myself I was keeping the house from falling apart. I did not yet understand that the house had already begun to fall apart. It was simply doing it quietly, through clean dishes, folded laundry, unpaid debts of gratitude, and a woman who could no longer remember the last time she had finished a cup of coffee while it was still hot. The night I learned the truth did not begin like a night that changes anything. It was a Wednesday in early March. Rain had been falling since afternoon, the kind that made the windows look dirty no matter how recently they had been cleaned. Sophie had come home from preschool with one wet sock because she had stepped into a puddle on purpose and then insisted she had not seen it. Noah had refused dinner except for 3 bites of mashed potatoes and half a banana. Harold complained that the damp weather made his knees ache, though he still managed to drive to the diner that morning for coffee with men who spoke loudly about taxes and never about their wives. Claire was late again. She had texted around 5:30. "Mom, inventory is taking forever. I will probably be home after 9. Please do not wait up." I did not wait up for Claire. I waited up because Noah had a cough, because the dryer was still running, because Sophie had spilled juice on her pajama top and cried as if the whole day had betrayed her, because Harold had gone to bed without taking the trash out, even though the bag was tied and sitting beside the back door. By the time the house settled, it was almost 11. Claire came in quietly, but not quietly enough. The front door gave its usual soft scrape against the weather strip. Her keys clicked against the small ceramic dish near the entryway. I was in the kitchen, wiping the counter for the second time, not because it needed wiping, but because I no longer knew how to walk away from a room unless it looked ready for morning. "You are still up," she said. She sounded surprised, maybe a little annoyed, then quickly softened it with a smile. "Noah was coughing," I said. "I wanted to make sure his medicine stayed down." "Oh, poor baby." She did not go upstairs to check on him. She opened the refrigerator, looked inside for a few seconds, then closed it without taking anything. "Did you eat?" I asked. "Yeah, we ordered something at work." She said it easily. I believed it easily. That was how we had lived for years. Claire placed her phone on the kitchen island while taking off her earrings. She wore small gold hoops I had not seen before. Her hair was pinned up loosely, and a few strands had fallen around her face. She looked tired, but not in the way I felt tired. Her tiredness had color in it. Mine had become gray. "I am going to shower," she said. "My hair smells like the store." I nodded. "There are clean towels in the upstairs basket." "Thanks, Mom." She picked up the earrings but left the phone. Then she went upstairs. I finished wiping the counter. I rinsed the cloth, wrung it out, and hung it over the faucet. The rain tapped lightly against the kitchen window. For a minute, the house was quiet in that deep way. It only became after everyone had taken what they needed from the day. Then, Claire's phone rang. It vibrated first, moving slightly across the island with a low, buzzing sound. I looked at it without meaning to. The screen lit up. Lena. I knew that name. Claire had mentioned Lena from work many times. Lena covered shifts. Lena knew the new manager. Lena had a little boy in kindergarten. Lena was the one who sometimes brought homemade cookies to the break room. At least, that was the picture I had in my head. The phone stopped ringing. I turned back toward the sink. Then it rang again. This time, I hesitated. It was late. If a coworker called twice after 11, perhaps something was wrong with the schedule for the morning. Claire had an early shift the next day. If she missed an urgent message, she would be upset. I dried my hands on a towel and picked up the phone, intending only to carry it upstairs and leave it outside the bathroom door. I had taken 3 steps into the hallway when the ringing stopped and the call connected. At first, I thought I had answered it by accident. My thumb must have touched the screen. I looked down, startled, ready to apologize to whoever was on the other end. But before I could speak, I heard Claire's voice. Not from the phone, from upstairs. The bathroom door was closed, and the shower was running. Her voice came through the ceiling in that muffled way sound travels through old vents and thin walls. She must have been using her wireless earbuds. Daniel had bought them for her the previous Christmas because she said the children kept pulling at regular headphones. The phone in my hand showed the call was active, but Claire was already speaking through the earbuds connected upstairs. I stood still in the hallway. At first, I could not make out the words clearly. The shower water hissed. Rain tapped the windows. Harold coughed once behind our bedroom door. I should have put the phone down on the stairs and gone back to the kitchen. That would have been the cleanest thing to do. Then I heard Claire say, "I told you not to call me this late." Her voice was low, sharp, not the voice she used with Lena. I looked at the name on the screen again. Lena. A man answered. I did not understand it right away. The mind is slow when it is trying to protect you. For several seconds, I thought perhaps Lena's husband had called from her phone. Perhaps there was some problem at work. Perhaps there had been an accident. My hand tightened around the phone. Claire said, "No, I cannot just leave. Do you think it is that simple?" The man's voice was too low for me to catch every word, but I heard enough. He was angry. Not loud, exactly, but familiar with her in a way no coworker's husband should have been. Claire spoke over him. "Because I have 2 kids here. Because Daniel is not stupid. Because his mother is always around. His mother, not mom. His mother." The words were small, but they moved through me like cold water. I took one step backward, then stopped. My heart was beating so hard that I could feel it in my throat. I was not trying to listen. I need to say that, even now. I had not picked up her phone to search it. I had not followed her. I had not opened a drawer. I was standing in my own hallway, holding a device I had meant to return to her, while the truth came down through the bathroom vent as plainly as weather. The man said something again. This time, Claire answered in a whisper that somehow sounded harsher than shouting. "You think I wanted this? You think I planned to get pregnant now?" I closed my eyes. For one second, I thought she meant Noah. Then, I knew she did not. The hallway seemed to tilt. I reached for the wall with my free hand. Upstairs, the shower kept running. Claire continued, "I already told you, I am not losing this house. I am not going back to some apartment over a laundromat because you cannot make up your mind." The man's voice rose. I heard a few broken words. "Your wife." My chest tightened. Claire laughed once, a bitter little sound I had never heard from her at our table. "Do not talk to me about your wife." After that, the conversation became clearer. Not because they spoke louder, but because my whole body had gone still. They were arguing about a pregnancy, a new one. Hers. His. He wanted it solved quietly. She wanted time. He said he could not have another scandal at home. She said she had already handled one pregnancy alone years ago because of him, and she was not going to be the only one paying for his cowardice again. Years ago. My hand slipped lower against the wall. The man said something I could not hear. Claire answered, "Do not pretend you forgot. Riverside. 5 years ago. You drove me there and then sat in the car like a scared teenager. I was the one who had to walk in. Riverside." The name opened a door in me I had kept closed for years. Daniel's old bedroom, the closet, the manila folder falling to the floor, Claire Whitman, pregnancy termination follow-up, my own hands closing the folder carefully, my own mind building a story merciful enough to live with. I had thought Daniel had failed her. I had thought my son had been careless, frightened, then responsible. I had taken that belief and built 5 years of tenderness around it. I had served her first. I had packed her breakfasts. I had rubbed her swollen feet. I had held her babies through fevers, paid for diapers from my pension, defended her tiredness, excused her lateness, folded her clothes, warmed her car, kept her secrets without knowing whose secrets they were, all because I believed she had once been hurt by my son. But the child she lost had not been Daniel's. The thought did not arrive as a sentence. It arrived as a physical pain, a pressure behind the ribs, a kind of inward collapse. I wanted to sit down, but there was nowhere to sit in the hallway. Claire was still talking. "I married him because he wanted to marry me," she said. You were not leaving your wife. What was I supposed to do? The man said something. No, she snapped. Do not say it like that. Daniel is a good man. For some reason, that hurt too. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because she knew it was true and had used it anyway. She lowered her voice again. His mother does everything. Do you understand that? Everything. Childcare, food, laundry. I can breathe here. I can work. I can see you. I am not giving that up just because you are scared. I gripped the phone so tightly, my fingers began to ache. I had heard enough. More than enough. Too much. I pressed the red button on the screen with a shaking thumb. The call ended. Upstairs, Claire's voice stopped mid-sentence. The shower kept running for a few more seconds, then shut off. I moved quickly then, though I do not remember deciding to move. I placed the phone on the stair ledge, halfway up, where she might believe she had left it. Then, I went back to the kitchen. I stood at the sink and turned on the faucet. Water ran over a clean plate. I had already washed that plate. I washed it again. My body wanted to do something familiar. The kitchen looked the same. White cabinets, blue dish towel, a small plastic cup drying upside down near the sink. Sophie's preschool artwork held to the refrigerator by magnets. Harold's pillbox beside the coffee maker. A grocery list in my handwriting. Formula, bananas, trash bags, oatmeal. The ordinary things looked almost insulting. How could they remain ordinary when everything inside me had changed? I turned off the faucet. Upstairs, I heard the bathroom door open. Claire's footsteps moved across the hall. A pause. She must have seen the phone. Another pause. Then her bedroom door closed. I waited for her to come downstairs. She did not. That was the first mercy of the night. I went to my bedroom, but I could not lie down. Harold was asleep on his back, mouth slightly open, one hand resting on top of the blanket. I looked at him and felt a tiredness so old it was almost beyond anger. He had slept through it. Of course he had. Harold had slept through many things in our marriage. Not because he was unconscious, but because he had arranged his life so that someone else would wake up first. I sat in the chair beside the window. The rain made thin lines on the glass. My hands shook in my lap. I tried to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth, a technique I used to teach children when they cried after falling on the playground. It did not work. My mind kept moving backward. Claire's first dinner at our house. Her thin wrist. Thank you, Mom. Daniel crying when she said she was pregnant with Sophie. Claire saying she felt trapped at home. Claire texting that inventory was running late. Claire coming home with perfume in her hair. Claire calling me a lifesaver. Claire saying, his mother does everything. Not Mom, his mother. I thought of Daniel on the road, sleeping in truck stops, eating sandwiches wrapped in paper, sending me $50 when he could, and believing he was helping. I thought of Sophie telling her dolls that Grandma would do it. I thought of Noah reaching for me with sticky hands. None of them had asked to be born into this. None of them had chosen the lies adults built around them. Then I thought of the new pregnancy. I pressed both palms against my knees. My heart was not slowing. A strange heat climbed the back of my neck. I stood up because sitting made me feel trapped. The room swayed slightly. I held the edge of the dresser until it passed. On top of the dresser sat a framed photograph from Sophie's first birthday. Daniel stood behind Claire with his arms around her shoulders. Claire held Sophie on one hip. Harold sat in his recliner smiling at the camera. I stood to the side holding the cake knife. My apron was still on. I had not noticed that before. I had baked the cake, cleaned the house, bought the decorations, rocked Noah inside my body as a future no one knew yet. No, that was wrong. Noah had not been conceived yet then. My thoughts were tangling. I shook my head, trying to clear it. The pressure in my chest moved upward. I opened the bedroom door quietly and stepped into the hallway. I wanted water, or air, or proof that I was still standing in the same world. Halfway down the hall, I heard Sophie cough in her sleep. Without thinking, I went into her room. She was lying sideways under the blanket. one foot sticking out. Her hair covered half her face. I tucked the blanket around her and moved the hair from her cheek. She did not wake. Grandma will do it. I turned toward Noah's crib. He slept on his stomach, one hand curled under his chin. His breathing was soft and steady. For several minutes, I stood between them. Whatever Claire had done, these children were real. Their warmth, their socks on the floor, their small cups in the sink, their voices calling for me before sunrise. Real, innocent, dependent. I loved them so much it frightened me. That was when the worst thought came. If I told the truth, what would happen to them? Daniel would be destroyed. Claire would fight. Harold would make it about shame, lawyers, money, custody, anger. Sophie would ask why Mommy was crying. Noah would reach for whoever still picked him up. My knees weakened. I went back to my room, but I did not make it to the chair. The edge of the bed seemed far away. I remember Harold stirring. I remember trying to say his name. What came out was barely a sound. Margaret? His voice sounded irritated first, then alarmed. I put one hand to my chest, though it was not exactly pain, more like pressure. More like my body had been carrying a house for years and had only now realized the weight was not love. Harold sat up. What is it? I wanted to tell him. I wanted to say Claire is pregnant. I wanted to say not Daniel's. I wanted to say Riverside. I wanted to say I am so tired. I wanted to say you all let me disappear. Instead, I said, I do not feel right. Those were the last words I remember clearly before the room blurred. The next thing I knew, there were lights above me. Not bright at first, then too bright. A voice asking if I knew my name. Another voice asking about medication. Harold somewhere nearby saying, my wife, as if the word itself proved something. Claire stood in the doorway in a robe, pale-faced, holding her phone against her chest. For one strange second, I wondered whether she had deleted the call. At the hospital, they said my blood pressure had spiked dangerously high. The doctor was a young woman with tired eyes and a calm voice. She asked if I had been under unusual stress. Harold answered before I could. Nothing unusual. She does too much around the house sometimes. The doctor looked at me, not him. I almost laughed. Nothing unusual. That was the whole problem. I stayed overnight. Harold went home around 3 a.m. because he said hospital chairs hurt his back. Claire texted once. Mom, I am so sorry. Please rest. Do not worry about the kids. I stared at the message for a long time. Do not worry about the kids. As if worry were a switch I had chosen to leave on. Daniel called before sunrise, panic in his voice. He was in Indiana, trying to find a place to pull over. Mom, what happened? I closed my eyes. My son sounded like a boy again. Blood pressure, I said. They are keeping me a little while. Why did it get that bad? I looked at the pale hospital curtain, the plastic water cup, the monitor line rising and falling beside me. I did not know how to answer without changing his life over the phone. So I said, we will talk when you get home. There was a silence. Is everything okay? No, I thought. But the nurse came in to check the cuff on my arm, and for one more morning I chose the sentence everyone knew how to live with. I am fine, sweetheart. Only this time, even Daniel did not believe me. When I came home from the hospital, the house looked exactly the same. That was the strange part. The same shoes by the door. The same basket of unfolded laundry near the stairs. The same cereal crumbs under Sophie's chair. The same blue dish towel hanging from the oven handle. For a moment, I stood in the entryway, with my hospital bracelet still around my wrist, and wondered how a place could look so unchanged after everything inside me had shifted. Harold carried my overnight bag in and set it beside the closet. You should go lie down, he said. I nodded. The old me would have gone to the kitchen first. I would have checked whether the children had eaten, whether the milk had spoiled, whether the trash had been taken out, whether Claire had remembered Noah's cough medicine. My eyes moved toward the sink out of habit. There were dishes in it, not many. Enough. I looked at them. Then I went upstairs. No one stopped me. Maybe they thought I was only obeying the doctor. Maybe they thought a day or two of rest would return me to the woman they knew. I thought that too for a while. The next morning, my eyes opened at 5:17. My body did not know I had permission to sleep. I lay still in the dark, listening. Harold breathed beside me. The house was quiet. Usually, by then, I would have been downstairs starting coffee, pulling eggs from the refrigerator, checking lunchboxes, moving laundry from the washer to the dryer before it soured. I even pushed the blanket back and sat up. Then I remembered the doctor's face. If you go back to the same pace without changing anything, this will happen again. Maybe worse. She had said it plainly, not dramatically. That made it harder to ignore. I sat at the edge of the bed with my feet on the floor. The room was cool. My robe hung on the chair. Downstairs, nothing moved. For the first time in years, I lay back down. I did not sleep much, but I stayed there. At 7:10, I heard Harold in the kitchen. A cabinet opened, closed, opened again. The coffee maker beeped in confusion because he had pressed the wrong button. A spoon dropped. He muttered something under his breath. I stared at the ceiling and felt no victory. Only a tired sadness, and beneath it, a small quiet space I had not felt in a long time. No one died because I did not make coffee. A little later, Claire's footsteps crossed the hall. Then Sophie's voice. Then Noah crying because he did not like waking up wet. The house began its usual morning scramble, except I was not in the middle of it catching every falling piece. Claire knocked once and opened my bedroom door halfway. "Mom, are you awake?" "Yes." Her eyes moved over me quickly, checking, measuring. I could see the question behind her face. "How sick are you, really? The kids need breakfast," she said carefully. "There is cereal in the pantry, eggs in the refrigerator." She waited. I did not get up. After a few seconds, she smiled too brightly. "Right. Of course. You rest." She closed the door. That was the first morning. It did not feel like freedom. It felt like breaking a rule no one had ever admitted existed. For the next few days, I did what the doctor told me. I took my medication. I checked my blood pressure. I sat down when I felt lightheaded. I let the dishes wait. I let the towels stay in the dryer until someone needed one badly enough to look. Claire moved through the house with an uneasy politeness. Harold tried to be helpful in the way a man is helpful when he expects praise for noticing the trash. Daniel came home 3 days after I left the hospital. He arrived before noon, still in his work boots, face drawn from driving through the night. When he walked into the kitchen and saw me sitting at the table with tea instead of standing at the stove, something in him faltered. "Mom," I smiled. "I am all right." "No," he said quietly. "You are not." That afternoon, while Claire was at work and the children were napping, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table. I had made tea because I needed something to do with my hands. He looked older than he had the last time he came home. Or maybe I was finally looking at him without trying to protect him from everything. "There is something you need to know," I said. He leaned forward. I told him only what I knew, not what I suspected, not what I feared. I told him about the phone, about the call connecting through the earbuds, about the man's voice, about Riverside, about the pregnancy she had mentioned. I told him I had once found a file before the wedding and had believed the situation involved him. I told him I had kept silent because I thought I was protecting everyone. Daniel did not interrupt. When I finished, he sat with both hands around his mug, staring at the tea as if something might rise from it and give him another answer. "I do not want you to believe me just because I am your mother," I said. "I want you to find out for yourself." His jaw tightened. "Why did you not tell me then?" "Because I thought I was being kind." The answer hurt him. I saw it. It hurt me too. He covered his face with one hand. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Upstairs, Noah coughed once in his sleep. Finally, Daniel said, "I need to know the truth." "Yes. And the kids?" My throat closed a little. "They still need adults who love them more than they hate each other." He nodded, but his eyes were wet. Daniel did not explode. That is not his way. He became quiet, too quiet. He stayed home for a week and told Claire his company had adjusted his route. He took Sophie to preschool. He learned where Noah's medicine was. He checked the refrigerator before asking what was for dinner. Small things, late things, but real things, Claire noticed. Of course she did. She also noticed me. I no longer waited dinner for her. I cooked enough for whoever was home at 6. If Claire texted that she would be late, I answered, "There is soup in the pot." I did not keep it warm. I did not plate it. I did not ask whether she had eaten. Her laundry, when left on the chair, stayed on the chair. Her coffee mugs stayed wherever she placed them until she moved them or they became inconvenient to her. When she asked whether I could watch the children on a Saturday because the store was short-staffed, I told her I could not. She stared at me. "You cannot? My blood pressure is still unstable. You will need to arrange childcare." I said it gently. That made it harder for her to argue. For a while, she tried sweetness. She brought me a soft gray scarf from the store and said it made her think of me. I thanked her and placed it in the hall closet. She ordered dinner one night and told everyone I deserved a break. The children ate fries and chicken strips. Harold said it was nice not to have dishes. I said, yes, it was. Claire watched my face the whole evening. Another week passed. She booked a weekend cabin 2 hours away and said maybe the whole family needed fresh air after everything. Daniel asked what weekend. She told him. He said he had work. She looked at me. I said travel was not good for me yet. The booking was canceled. After that, her sweetness became nervous. She began asking questions that sounded casual but were not. Did I say anything weird when you brought my phone upstairs that night? I did not bring your phone upstairs. Oh, I thought you did. You left it on the stairs. Right. I must have. She smiled. I looked at her with the calm face I had used for 34 years when children lied about who broke the pencil sharpener. Daniel found what he needed slowly. Not through one dramatic discovery, through small mismatches. Claire's timesheets did not match the nights she said she closed. A coworker Daniel knew from high school told him Claire had switched shifts months earlier and rarely worked past 7 on Wednesdays. The phone bill showed repeated late-night calls to a number saved under another name. A bank statement showed charges from restaurants outside the area on nights Claire claimed inventory ran late. Then there were messages. Daniel never told me every detail. I did not ask. A mother does not need every wound described to understand her child is bleeding. He only said one evening, standing by the back door with his coat in his hand, "You were right. I wished I had not been." The legal part took months, not because it was dramatic, but because real endings move through paperwork. Daniel hired an attorney. Claire hired one too. There were meetings, documents, questions about custody, accounts, money, who paid for what, who knew what, and when. The new pregnancy ended before the first hearing. Claire told Daniel it was stress. Daniel did not answer. The court did not turn pain into justice. Courts rarely do. But it did put names on things people had tried to blur. Deception, financial harm, marital misconduct, reimbursement, custody terms. Claire was ordered to compensate Daniel for part of what had been lost through the fraud and concealment. Not enough to repair everything. Enough to say the lie had cost something. Sophie and Noah stayed the center of Daniel's decisions. That was the one thing he did right from the beginning. He did not use them to punish Claire. He did not speak badly about her in front of them. When Sophie asked why Mommy was living somewhere else for a while, he sat beside her and said, "Adults sometimes make mistakes that mean they cannot live together. But none of it was her fault." She asked if Grandma was sick because of it. Daniel looked at me. I answered before he could. "I was sick because I forgot to take care of myself." Sophie frowned. "Are you still sick?" I smiled. Not like before. I meant it. The day Claire came to collect the last of her things, the house was very quiet. Daniel had taken the children to the park. Harold was in the garage, pretending to organize tools. I was in the kitchen, not cooking, just sitting at the table with a book open in front of me. Claire came downstairs carrying a box of clothes. She looked thinner, less polished. For the first time since I had known her, She looked her age. She stopped near the table. You knew, she said. I closed the book. Yes. How long? Since the night of the call. Her face changed. Shame, fear, anger, all moving too quickly to settle. Why did you not say anything? Because it was Daniel's life to handle. She looked toward the hallway, where the children's drawings still hung crookedly on the wall. I loved them, she said. I know. I did. I believe you loved them as much as you knew how. That answer seemed to hurt more than if I had called her a liar. She gripped the box tighter. I made mistakes. Yes. Everyone makes mistakes. Not everyone builds a home inside other people's sacrifice and calls it a mistake. The room went still. Her eyes filled. But I did not know whether the tears were for what she had done or what she had lost. I stood slowly. My knees still hurt if I moved too fast. I walked to the counter, picked up the gray scarf she had given me, and placed it on top of her box. She looked down at it. I was ready to forgive you and keep silent for the sake of the children, I said. 5 years ago, I found the file from Riverside. I closed it. I chose kindness instead of questions because I believed people deserved a second chance. Claire did not move. I was willing to forgive your past, I continued. But I could not forgive the life you kept choosing afterward. Her mouth trembled. Mom, I shook my head softly. You called me that when it helped you. I hope someday you learn what it should have meant. She cried then, quietly, almost like a child who had finally understood that the door was closing. I did not comfort her. That may sound cold. It was not. Comfort had been the language she understood best from me, and I was no longer willing to use it to erase the truth. Claire left with the box. I watched through the window as she placed it in her car. She sat behind the wheel for a long time before driving away. I did not feel happy. That surprised me. At first, I had imagined truth would bring relief, maybe even satisfaction. Instead, it brought silence. A clean, difficult silence. The kind that comes after a storm when branches are down, fences are broken, and the sky is finally clear enough for you to see the work ahead. Harold changed more slowly than everyone else. At first, he acted as if my new habits were temporary. He waited for me to resume the old shape of our marriage. When I did not, he became confused, then annoyed, then quiet. One morning, he stood in the kitchen holding his empty mug. Are you not making coffee? I am making tea. He looked at the coffee maker. There is coffee in the cabinet. He stared at me as if I had spoken another language. Then he opened the cabinet and made it himself. It was too weak. He drank it anyway. That was how our marriage began changing. Not through speeches, through coffee. Through him learning where the towels were kept. Through me going to my doctor appointments without asking whether dinner would survive without me. Through Harold realizing that a house did not become his simply because he had paid for it if he did not know how to care for the people inside. Daniel changed too. Guilt made him clumsy at first. He apologized too often. He tried to hand me money for things already paid. He offered to fix problems I had stopped seeing as mine. I let him help, but I did not let him turn guilt into another kind of dependence. He learned the children's routines because he needed to know them, not because I wrote everything down for him. He found a local route after months of searching. It paid less, but he came home most nights. One Saturday morning, I woke at 7 to the smell of toast. For a moment, I thought I had overslept into disaster. Then I heard Daniel in the kitchen telling Sophie not to pour too much syrup. Noah laughed. Harold complained that the coffee was strong enough to stand a spoon in. Daniel told him he was welcome to make the next pot. I stayed in bed for 5 more minutes, not because I was too tired to get up, because I could. Spring came quietly that year. The maple tree in the front yard filled with small green leaves. Sophie finished preschool and learned to write her name without the letters wandering off in different directions. Noah stopped coughing so much. Claire saw the children on the schedule the court had set. Some days went well, some did not. Daniel learned not to report every detail to me. I learned not to ask. One afternoon, I opened the nightstand drawer and found the old notebook. The cover was bent. Receipts were tucked between the pages. Years of them. Milk, formula, diapers, medicine, detergent. Small numbers that had once added up to my whole life. I removed them one by one and placed them in a shoebox. Not because they no longer mattered, because they no longer belonged on top of the page beneath them. Learn watercolor. The words were still there, written in my own hand from a life I had almost forgotten. I bought a small set of paints the next week. Nothing fancy. 12 colors, 2 brushes, a pad of thick paper. The cashier asked if they were for my grandchildren. I almost said yes out of habit. No, I said. They are for me. She smiled, as if that were the most normal answer in the world. 6 months after the hospital, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea cooling beside me and the watercolor pad open on my lap. Daniel was inside making eggs. Sophie and Noah were arguing over who got the yellow cup. Harold was reading the instructions on a new coffee maker. Because he had finally admitted the old one was not broken, he simply did not know how to use it. The morning was not perfect. Nothing about our family was. But it was honest in a way it had never been before. I dipped the brush into water, then into pale blue paint. My first line across the paper trembled. I almost laughed. After all those years teaching children to begin again, I had forgotten how awkward beginning could feel. Sophie ran onto the porch with toast crumbs on her shirt. "Grandma, what are you doing?" I looked at the uneven blue line. Learning. She climbed onto the chair beside me and leaned against my arm. "Can I watch?" "Yes, but you have to be quiet for a minute." She nodded seriously and lasted almost 10 seconds. Inside, Noah called for Daniel. "Not me, Daniel." I heard my son answer, "Coming." A chair scraped. Small feet ran across the kitchen. Life continued, but it no longer moved only through my hands. I looked down at the paper again. For many years, I believed love meant bending until everyone else was comfortable. I believed keeping peace was the same as keeping a family. I believed being needed was proof that I mattered. I was wrong. Love should not require one person to disappear so everyone else can feel whole. A family held together by one woman's exhaustion is not truly together. It is only waiting for her to fall. I did fall. Then, slowly, I learned to stand differently. The blue paint dried lighter than I expected. I added a little green beneath it, then a crooked line that might become a tree if I gave it time. Sophie rested her head against my shoulder, watching as if I were doing something wonderful. Maybe I was. For the first time in years, the morning belonged to me, and this time I did not give it away.